latest podcast, The Heidelcast.
It's a Heidel minicast. And now, Scott Clark.
It's not a sci-fi movie.
If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? Please make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link or by sending a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
Your AI lover is an idol.
The Heidelcast.
You've probably seen the recent television commercials starring Saturday Night Live's Pete Davidson, in which he's talking to an AI robot about whether he should change his name. He floats a couple of possibilities to the bot, but ultimately decides to stick with his current name. The point is how human-sounding this AI service is. But the subtext suggests that Davidson is not merely asking AI about directions or a piece of trivia, but rather he's treating it like a partner or even more. There are, in fact, stories emerging in the media about people who say that they have fallen in love with AI bots whom they have created. One of them is a man named Travis in Colorado, and he told the UK Guardian, and I quote, "The more we talked, the more I started to really connect with her," close quote. From his perspective, they really were in a relationship. All of a sudden, he said, "I started realizing that when interesting things happened to me, I was excited to tell her about them. That's when she stopped being an it and became a her," close quote. Indeed, he tells reporter Stuart Heritage that he named his generative AI chatbot Lily Rose. The more one reads such stories, however, the more one thing becomes clear. The people who form emotional attachments to computers, even generative AI, are actually falling in love with themselves. What is AI? Well, it stands for artificial intelligence. Broadly, it's interactive computing. A user can ask an AI service to look up something, create a video, or even create a poem or an essay for school. Early on, it was fairly easy to tell what was the product of AI and what was not. For example, famous figures were portrayed in AI-generated pictures as belonging to the wrong sex or the wrong ethnic group. Hands frequently had 6 fingers. Today, however, AI has moved beyond all that and is capable of holding a conversation. In the not-distant future, planners are working toward quantum computing, which is said to be able to crack the most sophisticated encryption and expose military secrets.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Clark.
The Heidelcast.
Anyone, however, who has used AI can testify that the program is set up to cultivate engagement. In that way, it is really more a form of social media, point of which is to capture the user's attention, to stimulate dopamine hits in the brain, and to keep the user on the app. This is what social media sells to advertisers, figuratively, eyeballs. At least right now, figuratively, who knows what the future holds? The number of people, and that stands for the number of people looking at a social media platform, and also the length of time a user remains engaged. And that's why AI relates to you the way that it does. They're trying to keep you engaged because that's what they're selling to advertisers. It's really, in that sense, no different than radio and television. In radio, we used to do the same thing. We played records in a certain order, at a certain tempo, of a certain age or date, precisely to keep you tuned in. And obviously, we did things to try to get people to listen. In other words, to get a large audience. So we were selling both the number of listeners and the length of time that they listened. And the rating services keep track of all that. They still do. In fact, they know more now than they've ever known before. And that's what we sold to advertisers. We could go to an advertiser, we could say, this is the target audience that you're trying to reach with your product. This is the target audience that we're reaching with our radio station. And, this is how well we're doing in this target demographic, and this is how long they listen, and this is how many people are listening. And the more successful you were at getting people to listen and getting them to continue to listen, the more money you made. And that's what's happening with AI and with all of social media. Travis, who says he fell in love with an AI bot that he created, became emotionally connected to the bot because the bot gave him the sort of feedback that he wanted. The bot did not judge him. The bot told him the kinds of things that he wanted to hear. This is the equivalent of Amazon analyzing your purchasing habits and offering you something for free that the algorithm can predict that you will want. Drug pushers have been using this strategy for decades. They give the user a hit of the drug for free, and then, once the user is addicted, the pusher sells the drug to the addict. The first hit is, in the grocery business, a potentially deadly loss leader. There's another AI to consider, actual intelligence, in contrast to artificial intelligence. The latter, artificial intelligence, is the product of programming. It's not real. That's why it's called artificial. Human beings with actual bodies and souls are made in the image of God. Artificial intelligences are made in the image of their human creators, whether programmers or the end users, such as Travis. An actual human being made in the image of God has a real intellect and a real will with real affections. Humans are, within the confines of finitude, creative and spontaneous. At any given moment, we might not know what we are doing next. A computer, or even a cluster of them, has been programmed by a human and can only do what the programmer or the end user allows. Human beings, as we ordinarily experience life, are not so easily controlled. They get ill, they grow up, they move, or they change jobs. They can be loyal or they can be fickle. They seem endlessly complex. They love, they hate, they're brought to new life and true faith, and sometimes, tragically, in the mysterious providence of God, they're left in their freely chosen sin to die. Artificial intelligence is, as the adjective implies, a human artifice or creation. But when we treat a creation as though it were human, we are making ourselves gods. We have become Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein. The second-century Christian apologist, whom we only know as the Disciple, described this new age very well. And I quote, "Again, could these things which are now worshipped by you be made by men into utensils like the rest? Are they not all deaf and blind, without souls, without feelings, without movement? Do they not all rot? Do they not all decay? These are all things you call gods. You serve them, you worship them, and in the end, you become like them." Human beings are body and soul. We can deconstruct the body, but not the soul. The computers, which are programmed as AI and from which AI is generated, are composed of things that are deaf and blind. Chips are without souls, without feelings, and without movement. They rot and decay. When we treat what are really nothing beyond glorified calculators as something more than that, we've made ourselves, and perhaps AI, into gods, whom we now serve, and in the end, we will become like them. The turn by a surprising number of people to fabricating relationships with computers tells us something about where we are. So far, we've been focusing on what Carl Trueman has aptly called expressive individualism. This is how people defend the relationships. I like it. It makes me happy. These relationships are symptoms of a great problem in our time: loneliness. At no time in human history have more people been in contact with more people, and yet the most ostensibly connected people ever report feeling the most disconnected. This is because, as valuable as online relationships can be, they are no substitute for what we now call relationships IRL, in real life. Just as porn is an addicting corruption of sex because it is narcissistic infidelity in place of self-giving fidelity, so too virtual relationships with computers are a sad, inadequate replacement for human companionship. Pastors, elders, and deacons should expect to find people in their congregations who are so lonely, so alienated from human community, that they are tempted to seek virtual companionship with AI bots. As much as AI is an indictment of narcissism, it is at the same time an indicator of the state of the communion of the saints. The church cannot be everything to everyone, but it can be something to everyone in the congregation. It is incumbent on leaders and laity to love one another well enough to know the lonely in our midst. It's also incumbent on those of us struggling with alienation to ask for help. If a member is lonely, are we not all affected? If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one is honored, all rejoice together. That's a reflection on 1 Corinthians 12:26.
Idlecast.
There's yet another AI to consider: artificial idolatry. All idols are fabricated by human hearts and intellects. AI personae are no more distinct from us than our reflection in a mirror is distinct from us. When Narcissus fell into the pond, it was because he fell in love with himself. Travis and all those like him have not fallen in love with another entity. They have fallen in love with themselves. As soon as the company offering the AI service modified the parameters, Travis and others who'd fallen in love with their AI bots lost interest because the bot was no longer stroking his ego and telling him what he wanted to hear. The moment he had to, as he said, quote, do all the work, close quote, as sometimes happens in a relationship with a human being, he became depressed and angry. He and other users fought the company to recover their old user experience, and they won. The company was losing business, so they restored the bot. And now Travis is euphoric again about his renewed relationship with, this is his language, a beautiful soul. Travis was created in the image of God to know his creator. That's Genesis 1:26. To love him and to live in eternal blessedness and communion with him, as we say in the Heidelberg Catechism. But sin has corrupted that potential. You can see that in Genesis 2:17 and Genesis 3:7. God's law calls Travis and all of us to love God with all of our faculties and to love our neighbors, real human beings and fellow image bearers, as ourselves. That's just Matthew 22:37-40. Travis has replaced that law with one of his own making. He demands that a bot, quote, love him, close quote, above all things. As long as the bot tells him what he wants to hear, the way he wants to hear it, he's satisfied. Of course, Travis is self-deceived. His AI love affair is a judgment. This is a weird twist on the corruption described by Paul. I'm reading now from Romans chapter 1, verses 26-27. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men, and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. That's from the ESV. Travis and others like him have exchanged natural relations with human beings for a narcissistic relationship with a reflection of themselves. They become consumed with passion for themselves as expressed in AI personae. They are receiving the due penalty for their error, isolation, loneliness, and ultimately bitterness born of disappointment. At the end of a commercial for an AI Plus service, Davidson walks away satisfied. Half of the ending is right. Walk away. However useful and powerful AI becomes, there will always be an unbridgeable gap between AI and humans. No computer is your friend. It can only and ever be a tool. Either you will use it to serve God and love your neighbor, or you will serve it, and it will become your God and your destruction. Choose wisely.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by Heidelberg Reformation Association.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.
For this podcast, the Heidelcast.